Welcome to the Wickedly Smart Women podcast, featuring stellar conversations with emerging and established wickedly smart women. Thanks for joining us today as we celebrate women who are committed, care deeply, and have the courage to take action and create conscious change all around the world. Now here's your wickedly smart host, Anjel B Hartwell.
Welcome to another episode of the Wickedly Smart Women podcast, where we celebrate wickedly smart women and provide our listeners with a wealth of wisdom, along with immediately actionable steps to be smarter, spunkier, and more successful in their impact and their leadership. This is your host, Anjel B Hartwell, and today we welcome our special guest, Baeth Davis. Baeth is known as Dr. Purpose to global leaders, especially the healing artist entrepreneurs. Using her intuition, extensive content creation experience, 22 years in business, and expertise in scientific hand analysis and human design, she helps you discover and unleash your life purpose and then design a business around your core purpose so that you can profit and serve. She is a supporter of the Unstoppable Foundation, just like my child, and the Pachamama Alliance, and is committed to bringing the life purpose mastery to creative entrepreneurs globally. And I have known Baeth since 2008 when she came on my radar screen. I remember when I saw her, I was just stunned because at the time she was focused on scientific hand analysis, which is another word for reading people's palms. And I was just coming out of my corporate career and stepping into my purpose work. And I was doing readings for like $45 a reading for crystals. I was using crystals. And Baeth, back in 2008, was doing palm readings for $1,500. And I was like, oh my God, she's my shero. This woman knows what the hell she's doing in the world to be able to get purpose in the right places and in front of the right people. And so I have been a fan. I have been a student. I have been, just a massive supporter of her and her work in the world for years. And I'm just so grateful that you're here. Baeth, thank you for coming.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we are two New England girls and wickedly smart. And
so smart.
We're so smart. And I want to start our time together today, Baeth, by just talking about purpose. And was purpose something that was always on your radar? Were you the little girl that was going around telling people that, they were out of alignment and needed to shape up and get aligned? Or was that something that came further down the road for you?
Pretty much from the beginning. My mother tells me this story, which I only remember as a story, but that when I was about 2 years old, this is in the 70s, and I was very upset. It was during the Ethiopian famine, and there was some starving child in one of those Christian charity ads to feed the children or what have you. And I started crying. And I cried because how can we live in a world where we let our fellow family members die? And my mother said, I realized at that moment that you really were empathetic to the plight of others and that you were here to be of service to them. And that we had a highly, highly sensitive child on our hands. I've always had a sense that I came here from somewhere else. My awareness is from deep in space. And I think a lot of human beings feel that way. We talk about aliens a lot. And I like to say we are the aliens. Every one of us is different from everyone else. And we're all alien to each other and hopefully not to ourselves. But there was that early encounter with my own empathy. And then I was systematically bullied from the time I entered kindergarten until probably 5 years ago, in different forms, bullied. And what's odd in all of that is I never really took it personally, but more it just added to my heartbreak that we live in a world that consistently puts things and money and profit before people. And the person that's different is the person that gets picked on. And I never really accepted that. I was able to maintain my identity in the face of opposition for a very, very long time. Now, it isn't to say my life has been filled with misery and sadness. It has not. It is not. I think in part because I don't take a lot personally. It's not to say it didn't hurt, but I think that was the beginning of this recognition that I was born with a high awareness about the plight of others. And not everybody's that way, and they don't need to be. But for those of us who are here in service, very much our work is for the other. For whatever reason, our psychology, our psyche feels it relatively complete internally, and such that the service is the call. So that's going way, way back. But I think that it's that deep empathy and the awareness of especially the suffering of children. And so my work very much now is to help adults that have children, to help their children be empowered in their uniqueness and to make decisions as themselves, but also for those of us who have the time, the money, and the resources to deal with our own mother wound, which is personal, tribal, and collective, and also be there to help other people move out of wounding, move out of victim consciousness into an empowered place. Basically, I help people adult.
Yes,
and I've
do.
had to do a lot of adulting along the way to adult. And now I've reached a place where I'm realizing what the world is now requiring of me is to bring tenderness. Because for a long time, I carried swords, energetic swords, because of being picked on so much for not fitting. I didn't fit anywhere. And I think a lot of us feel that way. I mean, who really does fit? You just have people that can mask better than other people, but everyone's trying to fit somehow to have community, have friends, get along. And,
especially when you're wickedly smart. When you're wickedly smart, you stand out in ways that aren't necessarily wonderful. I had, I definitely received bullying as well when I was in my childhood.
Right.
And, I'm sure many of our listeners do as well. And, what you said about being empathic and being on the receiving end of the bullying, what that really brought up for me, Beth, is you had your swords, right? You were able to somehow navigate through all of that with nicks rather than hemorrhages. Let's say.
I hemorrhaged. I just did it internally. I hemorrhaged, right? I took it on rather than some people project it out.
Right. Well, and so I guess what I want to ask is for those people who are presently in still trapped in trauma, in crisis mode, right? How do we support them to be able to acknowledge the wounding, heal the wounding, and then simultaneously bring their gifts out?
That's a great question. There's a lot of different ways I could go with this, but let's for a moment, let's talk about what I'm picking up intuitively from the collective. I'm a vast researcher, as you know, and I probably read on average 4 or 5 hours a day. And I've been doing that since I was, a child. So, and I've had a lot of experience in there as well. But when I tune into women in the world right now, at this moment in time, there's 3 primary woundings I see coming up. Now, granted, there's probably other kinds of wounding and there's nuances to these 3, but just to bottom line it, the first one is disappointment. The second one is rage. And the third energy is faking it. Right? So we've got disappointed, enraged people pretending, I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine. Everything's fine. And it's not fine for that person. So the first thing, let's talk about disappointment, right? So the disappointment is life comes along and it doesn't go the way we think it should. Or someone's promised us something or made a deal with us, however that promise was made, and then it's disappointing. Well, even in the face of disappointment, there's always an opportunity. But if we allow ourselves to become addicted to the disappointment, it actually becomes extensive grief. And this leads to depression. And then people start to hang on to it, to the thing they're disappointed about, because somehow they think maybe that's the best they'll ever get. So there's the first part, that the disappointment. And also, I feel this for men and women and men and boys and girls worldwide, which is that in this current frequency, there's a lot of emphasis put on outer appearance, the fakery. Mm-hmm. That like your skin color or your religion or your ethnicity or what gender you are or are not somehow defines you, rather than that being a label that only the owner can give to themselves to understand themselves, but it's never a label to come from the other. It is not me to judge someone else's sexuality or their religion or their culture unless they're trying to use it to harm me. That's a different conversation. But we've been very much been living in a time of, they call it postmodern. And the idea in postmodernism is that the symbol of the thing is equal to the thing. So the appearance of wealth, the appearance of fame, if it's marketed well enough, you become famous for being famous.
The age of the influencer has certainly done that. You know, I call it the Lambo and mansion people. All you got to do is rent a Lambo and stand in front of a mansion and get somebody to take good pictures of you.
Or in front of a plane or something.
Yeah, whatever.
And I think, wow, people are really easily manipulated if they think this stuff is real. And honestly, the people that actually own Lambos and mansions and planes don't advertise that fact because they don't want their children to get kidnapped. Let's be real. I'm trying to be funny, but really, you don't advertise that if you actually have it. It's usually. So there's that surface piece, and then the rage piece. Right? I kind of went out of order. So disappointment is life doesn't go the way our mind thinks it should, and we don't know how to get through it emotionally. Then we've got the fakery of, all these men and women thinking that their lovability is their ability to not look older than 35. And I'm like, what happens to all the people? Like, don't you want to live past 35? Because you're basically saying that, you're over the hill if you're 35. I mean, it's insane. It's just to sell people stuff. But nevertheless, there are people who actually think their life is over at 35. I mean, 35 for me was when I really got rolling. It wasn't until I was
38 for me was when I got rolling.
Right. At 35, I was like, oh, you know what? It's time for me to make some real money and be really free and really apply myself and stop dinking around, like get busy with my gifts. But it took me that whole 15 years of like from age 20 to 35 to even know who I was on some level, to have something to build. All right. So I sort of chuckle with people putting all this pressure on themselves to have the wisdom of a bodhisattva, when they're 21. Yeah. And so in a very capitalistic Western society that only sees a one-way street of profit and doesn't actually create a feedback loop, because basically we're living in Pac-Man now. Consume, consume, consume with no feedback. Like if you're going to manufacture something, it ought not to pollute. If you can't break it down into non-pollutable substances, it should be illegal to produce it. So we don't have these feedback loops, or you cut the trees down, but then you replant the trees, right? So when we destroyed feedback loops in the name of endless profit, we created a world that was purely extractive. And if someone isn't fighting the good fight to brace themselves against that Pac-Man life, they become extractors as well. And for women, the first thing that starts falling apart is their body. And they go into burnout, right? Like you had in corporate.
Right. We're going to take a quick break because we're already, you and I could spend hours talking, I'm sure. Okay. We're already at the break. When we come back, I do want to get into the enraged, because we've talked about faking and disappointment. We want to get into the enraged because there's still a lot of rage in a lot of women for a lot of reasons that I think is important for us to talk about. But right now, we are going to take a quick break. So Wickedly Smart Women, we could use your support. If this show is lighting you up, we invite you to join our vibrant community, make a donation at wickedlysmartwomen.com, and share the show with the powerful women in your life who could benefit from our content. And I am now thrilled to announce something truly exciting for our listeners who are ready to break free from corporate life and start building their own consultancy business. If you've been feeling that call to step into your next level of freedom and impact, we are now accepting applications for the Wickedly Smart Women Start Smart 30-Day Intensive. This is your chance to create a business that's fully aligned with your expertise and purpose. To learn more and apply, please visit wickedlysmartwomen.com and click Apply to Speak with Anjel, and let's explore if this program is the next right step for you. I want to give a huge thank you to everyone who's downloading, rating, and reviewing the show. We are celebrating thousands of downloads from all over the world. We just found out we won our 14th award, the Davy Award, in the 19th Annual Davy Awards. And I want to shout out to our listeners in Massachusetts. We might as well shout out to our listeners in Mass, where Beth comes from, and to our listeners in Morocco and Mongolia. We'll do all the M's today, and we will be right back with Baeth Davis.
The Wickedly Smart Women podcast is brought to you by the Creative Age Consulting Group. Women, are you feeling that inner nudge, knowing it's time for a change and ready to decide what's next? If you're a high-achieving woman considering leaving corporate life to start your own consultancy, now is the time to gain clarity. Introducing the Wickedly Smart Women's Roadmap to Get Started Consulting. This is your essential guide to making the decision with confidence. Inside, you'll discover the top 10 signs that it's time for a high-achieving woman to exit corporate and start her own business before it's too late. Visit roadmap.wickedlysmartwomen.com or click the link in the show notes to download your free copy and take the first step toward deciding if starting your own business is the right move for you. Once again, that's roadmap.wickedlysmartwomen.com. Get started today.
And we are back with Baeth Davis. Before we went to the break, I told you I'd let you know more about where you can find out about working with Baeth, getting her on your team, your support team. You can go to yourpurpose.com. There you can get your free chart for your human design. Baeth is a master at the human design stuff. And you can also join her free community at Align to Your Design on Facebook, where she very frequently offers a very in-depth education around the human design process and understanding your own design and learning how to live your design so that you can actually prosper in your life and from your purpose. So, Baeth, when we went to the break, you were talking about the 3 areas where you're feeling generally that women are navigating: the disappointment, the faking it, and we left off talking about enraged. So let's dive back in there, and then let's talk about your work and
Okay.
Align to Your Design and your purpose work.
Yes, let's do that. All right. So the one of the main things that I'm here on the planet to help people or teach people about is awareness about emotions. Disappointment is a feeling. Feeling like you have to fake it is a feeling, right? But inauthenticity, and then rage. So let's spend a moment on rage, because I'm a big fan of it. I'm going to really generalize right now, but typically what I've noticed among vast swaths of population worldwide is that in this current climate, at least in the Western world, but also in other parts of the world, is that men are allowed their rage, maybe due to their higher testosterone levels, but they're allowed their testosterone tends to trigger more aggression. And women have testosterone and have aggression, they have rage, they have anger. But in most cultures, women are conditioned to be quiet or silent and accommodating. And this is very amusing to me because historically, if you really study the past, this is a rather new development. Why? Well, intelligent cultures know that women have profound intuition because we're designed to protect children. And so we're wired to determine what's safe and not safe. That is our mastery. And the purpose of intuition is to keep you safe so you can thrive. In this process of whatever's going on the planet right now, where many women are afraid of their own anger because they don't set boundaries immediately when they need to, it builds up as resentment, frustration. And over time, this becomes rage. If that rage is not off-gassed in a healthy way, typically physically, walking, punching a punching bag, a real emoting, like an ecstatic dance where you can feel your feelings, or just going in your room and crying your eyes out, making art, writing. There's lots of ways to off-gas emotion so that we can come into tune with, well, how do I really feel about myself, my life? And feelings have been demonized in general. Even the psychology world talks about feelings as if they're mental illness. Like if you're a very emotional person, suddenly you're bipolar and need medication, right? If you're contacting other realms, you're schizophrenic. If you are a bit confident, you're suddenly a narcissist. So there's sort of like nowhere you can go. You've been pathologized. So what people learn to do in a climate like that, where every expression is wrong and doesn't fit because it's not silent, especially women, it gets repressed. And over time, this creates this buildup of anger. And then women become catty, mean, passive aggressive, very rarely outwardly aggressive, although it does happen, it's more rare. And so what I have observed in women's groups, clubs, coaching organizations, corporate organizations, medical, you name it, is that the women's inability to feel anger, which is a direct feedback system that your boundary has been crossed, even if you didn't know you had that boundary. Suddenly you know, oh, I don't like that. I have a boundary there. And you don't do anything about it. You blame someone else, you bury it, whatever. It builds into rage. Most women I meet, all their power is tied up in repressing their rage. And this rage goes back centuries, millennia of oppression under patriarchy, which really got going with agriculture. It was really the result of who was the father, because it was about who inherits the land. And this was before we had all this medical ways of determining these things. So bottom line is nobody's fault. But that is really what's up for us as women. And so we're seeing all this rage in the world with men. Well, if we want to extinguish it, bring it to temperance and balance, women need to take responsibility for their rage instead of projecting it on men. And men need to stop projecting their sensitivity, their woundedness, their inability to deal with their more subtle feelings onto women and blame women for why they're not happy. Right? That's the main generalized battle I see between men and women. Now, why am I mentioning this? Until men and women drop their swords, we don't have synergy among us. And it becomes very, very polarized and very, very imbalanced. And then you have these leaders who are these big daddies, right? And they're going to fix everything. Well, we know how that goes. They're definitely not fixing everything.
And they're just the archetype. They're the
archetype. Totally.
Yeah.
Right.
I was listening to somebody the other day and they were talking about the dark father archetype. I was like, oh, that's exactly right. That's the dark father archetype right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, if you look at who's behind in the United States, like what's going on in our government and who is elected president, most of the men involved come from big tech. Right. And they all have stories of having rather atrocious paternal relationships. Like their fathers were full-on psychopaths or narcissists or physically abusive. And I've also noticed a lot of women I know who are like, oh, the big daddy's going to save things. I'm like, not so much, but good luck with that. Is they have projected out their fear onto this strong man who's going to protect them. And both are distortions in that the masculine in the world is being asked to find its heart again. You know, when Elon Musk wears a T-shirt that says Mars or bust, I'm like, how about the news report tomorrow is not one baby died today from war, hunger, or abuse? How about that is what you put your brain power on, boys? Because, and I can only call them boys because they're boys with toys who are living in some kind of, I don't know, synth illusion that they're going to conquer space because they love Star Wars when they were kids. Instead of like, we live here on Earth. This planet is perfectly suited for human beings. We're human beings. And so that's my challenge to all the men in the world is start actually using all your brain power for clean energy, clean food, and happy children. And women, how about learning to say no and learning how to set boundaries and learning how to have self-respect, because women who have self-respect don't tolerate nonsense, not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit.
Right.
All right. We've only got about 3 minutes left. So I want to make sure that people know about, like I said, we could go on for hours. Beth is prolific and incredibly intelligent and wickedly smart. And I encourage you to get more of her at Aligned to Your Design on Facebook group, because she's incredibly generous with her teachings as well. So in the last 3 minutes, let's talk about the purpose work that you do with people, and, call in the people who are meant to be working with you now.
Well, I primarily work with people who are what I would call the tribal shamans, like yourself. And the tribal shaman is connected to communities, but not really in the community. We're more like we're on the watchtower. We're more on the outside. And we see the patterns, good, bad, and ugly, within the tribe that are helping it thrive or not. So my work with purpose, which I started actively as a business when I was 27, so almost over half my life ago, fundamentally is to reconnect people to their true design. Each of us has a unique biology that's designed to express itself in a certain way. Some people are definitely here to be pro athletes like Simone Biles, right? And some of us are definitely here to be avant-garde artists like Joni Mitchell or Patti Smith, and others of us are here to talk and listen, right? And some of us do all of those things. And so what I enjoy doing is helping male and female leaders who are deeply, deeply committed to an entrepreneurship that isn't just about the aggrandizement of the individual ego of the individual, and is rather about how you, in becoming prosperous, can enable others to become prosperous. And that means you first have to be in alignment with yourself. And currently, that would be about getting in touch with how you really deeply feel. And for many people, it's going back to that initial wound of the mother. And we have two wounds going on right now. We have a mother wound and a father wound that's what's up for humanity to heal. So whatever your deal is, you might have wounds with both parents, mother, father, whatever. Really, I help people in crisis address why they're in crisis. And the shamanic piece is my abilities are such that using esoteric external tools, as well as who I am as a being, I very quickly can see in the person where they're out of alignment. And I mirror to them their highest self, their highest timeline. Yeah, and that's what I'm here to do.
Beautiful. And many of the people that you've helped, I've watched blossom. I had a client that I sent to you who just posted something on Facebook, and I was like, oh my God, look at her. She's finally safe in her own skin. She's finally safe in her own skin. She's finally living her unique life out loud and not having to show any of it if she doesn't want to. That was just so clear to me that there was no more projection there. I was really just delighted to see that. So for everybody who's listening, Beth is your person if it's time for you to get yourself out of crisis and into your calling. And if you have a calling, you can feel it. You can feel it in your heart. And that's part of what's causing the crisis, is this desire for the calling to emerge. And the repression of that calling is actually creating a lot of friction. I got the friction card when I was doing my cards last night. And that friction can even eventually cause disease. So let's not do that. Let's get out of that and into alignment and on purpose. Thank you so much for listening, Wickedly Smart Women. We love hearing from you. Your feedback helps us keep growing and serving you better. Head on over to wickedlysmartwomen.com right now to join our community, share your biggest takeaways, ask questions, submit guest suggestions, or explore the Wickedly Smart Women Start Smart 30-day intensive. If you're ready to align your mindset, create your exit plan, and step into your own mission-based consultancy business, this program could be exactly what you've been waiting for. Thank you so much for tuning in. Keep your ears open, your heart strong, and remember, you are a wonderful woman.
Thanks for tuning in, downloading, and listening. Be sure to rate and review Wickedly Smart Women on Apple Podcasts and share with other women who can benefit from today's episode. Wickedly Smart Women is the premier podcast series for informing, activating, and inspiring the leader who carries profound wisdom and knows that now is the time to welcome wealth. We welcome your feedback and guest suggestions and invite you to subscribe to our mailing list to be notified of each new episode at wickedlysmartwomen.com.